So first of all, I'd just like to make an introduction to Cloudflare. Cloudflare have a wonderful reputation over the last 14 years, but for most industries, it's a little bit narrow in that actually most people understand we do application services, WAF, CDN, DDoS, recognized as market leaders for all of those, but actually we have 4 pillars of services within the world of Cloudflare. We have a really rich developer platform with edge compute, edge databasing, storage, no egress charges. It's actually developer week at Cloudflare, so you'll see lots of announcements this week in the world of Cloudflare. However, what we're really here to talk about today is our secure access service edge portfolio. And we logically break that down into a set of zero trust services, which are aimed at your users, and then a series of network services, which are effectively treated like Cisco as a service, how a lot of our customers think of us, but actually allow you to then make the benefits of smart routing, edge-based firewalling, and actually using effectively our global network as your own infrastructure. Now, we have some fundamental differences in the world of Cloudflare and how we actually deliver our services. And this is really important for the future of not only networking, but actually our user experience and how we deliver services in general. 14 years ago, we made a bet that software-defined computing would be the future, and that actually the network is going to be the way that we deliver all these services, the internet effectively. So what this means is that we developed a platform which is entirely software-driven. It runs on commodity hardware, and every feature we have runs on every metal, and that runs in every data center we have on a global anycast network. This gives us a huge amount of resilience in terms of our service, n times 10,000 plus on the metals, 300 plus on the data centers. We also have 11,500 interconnects running across our network now. And actually, we've updated the slides officially this week. We're now at 175 terabits worth of capacity in terms of our network to this massive global scale. And actually, this brings with it a huge amount of resilience, but it also brings a huge amount of benefits in terms of single pass inspection, performance for your users, and the availability of those services, which actually allow you to really start to realize the difference between actually the promise of cloud security and actually the real world experience of cloud security, in that actually in disparate locations performance suffers and actually user experience suffers. And as much as it's nice to do away with the tin, then actually if it's not going to be good for your users, that's not a good thing. On network, we'd like to think actually resolve those issues for you. That's the last of the product. Zero Trust and Secure Access Service Edge is not a product set. I just want to make that really clear to everyone in the room here. You've probably had many a salesman talking to you by now, telling you they can solve your problems with Zero Trust. Zero Trust and Secure Access Service Edge are frameworks. That they're a set of controls that are designed really to help modernize the way we look at our users and actually manage the authentication of our traffic. Yes, there are products behind each of those, but really what we're actually doing now is actually moving away from that traditional LAN to LAN connection and that classic castle and moat style infrastructure, and moving to a user to resource model that actually is agnostic to where those resources actually are. So actually you can apply the same controls to anything that's sitting in AWS or Azure as those that can be sitting within your own private infrastructures and private networks. Key difference here is that actually we're assuming risk. We're micro-segmenting that user. We're blocking the ability to move east to west. We're blocking the ability for you to see your network in the first place. We're making authentication key to everything we do. Identity is key in Zero Trust. And actually we can go much further and actually not only verify the identity of the person, but actually of the device itself. And not only the device itself, but actually the health of the device itself by talking to other technologies within that platform itself, looking for things like malware infections, looking for things like trust scores within third-party solutions, and actually leveraging access decisions and making decisions based on the context of the device itself, rather than just something static like a serial number or that it might be domain joined for argument's sake. And Zero Trust is that shift in mindset where we're actually going from castle and moat, LAN to LAN, effectively giving a very broad access to everything, to actually making a policy-based decision that's based on the user, the device, and the real-time health of that device. And ultimately, we give you a set of controls that allow you to then move away from this classic castle and moat. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, we'll see what I would dare say is very familiar to most of you in the room here. It's a very classic corporate network design as it stands today. Lots of site-to-site connectivity, VPNs for remote access. You'll probably have a series of edge proxy connections where you see around the bottleneck section there with firewalls and web proxy gateways and such. And actually, you'll probably struggle for control and visibility of your cloud resources in SaaS applications. The VPN itself has become a massive attack vector. It's the actual attacks against hardware and expressly up orders of magnitude over the last 2 years, about 5,000% according to our own stats. They're also a major source of ransomware attacks, being that LAN-to-LAN connection. Once you've actually got across that tunnel, then effectively you're into that corporate environment, and it's very easy to then start spread and doing worse within your environments. Cloudflare One gives you this identity-based set of controls that allow you to build those point-to-point connections across our global backbone. We can provide firewalling or completely air-gap your data centers. We have identity-based controls for your user on both managed and unmanaged devices. Don't need to have agents in as well. And actually, we're agnostic to where your resources actually are. You can apply the same controls to a SaaS resource as to one you're hosting yourself within GCP or indeed anything else on the internet. It's quite a big bang approach. It can be a bit scary to a lot of people, and I think it's really important to understand that most zero trust platforms, and certainly our own, actually provide a framework which is designed to enable you to move really at your own pace and transition from the old world into the new. And actually, we tend to focus this basically on risk. Ultimately, we're looking about security, we're looking to lock down your environment, and actually we start where the biggest risks actually would be. And typically that will be third-party access into your environment that would typically have privileged access. So if it's contractors or developers that might be coming in, doing some database work for you, something like that. And actually then we can give them agentless-based controls that plug in some of the gaps around SSH and VNC communications across your network. We can give them really simple ways to connect into your resource of identity controls and ultimately allow you to start phasing out those third-party VPNs in your environments. More typically would then move into things like retiring your VPN entirely for your remote workforce. And then finally actually moving into controls like CASB and Web Gateway and actually integrating the whole of the system so you've got the user fully covered. And then perhaps moving into the network services where we're looking at where edge firewalling and edge connectivity is still actually required, where their site-to-site connections might actually be required. What I would say as part of this journey, we've developed a website called zerotrustroadmap.org. It's got a lot more detail around the individual considerations around identity controllers and things that you might actually need. But Zero Trust in itself removes about 85–90% of the need for SD-WAN style connections. So if you're still considering large investments in SD-WAN and LAN-to-LAN style connectivity, then a Zero Trust style solution might actually be a better way forward for you. There's still going to be some needs for LAN-to-LAN style connections for database replication, anything server initiated, but for the most part, you can do away with those LAN-to-LAN style connections, which ultimately takes away risk from your organization. So what this then does is give you this framework of controls that allow you clientless access. We can give you multiple device clients so we can support anything you need to bring into the network, from Chromebooks, iOS, Android, all the way up from your Linux and Macs and Windows platforms. So there's agents for just about everything you'd ever need to. Give you lots of simple ways to connect in at a network level via SD-WAN, IPsec, GRE, or even what we refer to as a Cloudflare tunnel, which allows you to reduce the attack surface even further. You can even connect to us directly at layer 1 and layer 2. We're globally co-located with Megaport and Packet Fabric and Zayo. There's a whole range of different locations around the world, thousands literally around the world, that you can connect to us at layer 1 and layer 2. Normally then that gives you this really flexible, simple architecture. Actually, all your user needs is an internet connection. And actually, we're agnostics, whether that's a 4G, whether that's a home broadband connection, or everything else, we can give you agentless-based access to systems. With managed devices, then we can actually start to talk to your endpoint technologies, start to integrate with Defender and Microsoft Intune, and start to bring you conditional access flows and all of those context-based device posture controls and goodness. There's definitely a lot of benefits on having the endpoint agent still, but you don't necessarily need it. And then we've had those free network options, as I referred to, the IPsec or GRE tunnels, fairly basic traditional connections. And then we also have what we refer to as a Cloudflare tunnel. It's a small piece of software you can deploy internally on your network. That makes an outbound-only connection and talks to our API. That allows you to block all inbound connections to your network or to your cloud resource And actually you can then push all your traffic through Cloudflare's authentication platform, federate those identities, and ensure that only approved users get access to that resource. Really simple. Get the traffic to us, get it to our network. Our Anycast infrastructure will then start dealing with it and applying the controls, passing the traffic on to internet applications, SaaS resources, or anything you have within your own cloud environments as well. We mentioned integration at the top of this, so context. Really important. This is probably one of the biggest differences in the world of the zero trust frameworks and these SASE frameworks actually offer you in terms of, if you like, comparisons to the old world in functionality. So first of all, that's support for identities. So if you can know what it is going. Support for identities. So we have the broadest support within the marketplace, but modern platforms such as this will allow you to then talk to things like LDAP systems, federated systems, SAML or IDs, or OAuth and OIDC connections. You can basically take any SSO platform, social media profiles, the existing more legacy style identities, actually on-premise. We can even create manual identities within the platform itself, and you can use those in any combination to actually then provide access to resources within your network. So you could even just bring your third-party contractors as your AD connection in, use that, define policies to gain access to resources in your own environment, for example. And vice versa, if you happen to acquire an organization perhaps tomorrow, then actually you can use your own identity controls to deploy policies into their own environments and their own cloud resources. So there's huge amounts of flexibility to federate that identity, bring in lots of identity sources to make it really simple to start building that foundation of zero trust, and that is identity. We then actually move into integration with the technology and management partners. So we do a huge amount of work with Microsoft. We fully support all of the conditional access flows that you'll see with Intune. We can actually add a lot of value to those flows. We can actually start to enforce things like hard key use. We can actually start to enforce blocks. We can actually talk to Sentinel-1 and Defender and actually use the outputs of those tool sets in real time to then start making access decisions and changing web gateway policies, for example. Just depending on the outputs of these tool sets. And it's all of this third-party information that really makes the technologies and, if you like, the difference between the old world and the new. You've got flexible identities that you can bring from everywhere. You've got the integration and context of other technologies from Jamf and Intune and those third-party endpoints that are sitting on the devices themselves. And all of that then runs through into the platform and allows you to make real-time decisions. There's also a number of performance benefits you get from toolsets like this and integration of our technologies. So we have, for example, the Network Performance Partnership from Microsoft, which actually recognizes the fact that we are both faster and more secure for accessing Azure and 365 than going by the public internet. And the way to think of it, it's kind of like an express route connection from anywhere. So the user flow hits our nearest Anycast location, smart routes across our backend network, and then direct into our peerings from Microsoft. As I say, we recognise as the Microsoft Security Innovator of the Year just a few months ago. We run the Edge VPN service, huge amounts of integration and a lot of value that we can bring around anything Office 365 and Azure, and ultimately into your Microsoft world. So what this really allows you to do, as I say, is replace and augment your VPNs. You can do it as a big bang approach, and we have plenty of organizations that do. So I think when Roche first came on board with us, we deployed the first 200 applications and 55,000 users in 4 days. So it's really quick to scale. There's very little in the way of hardware or anything required. Certainly nothing new that you require within your environment to make this happen. What that then allows you to do is integrate with those identity providers, verify that device posture, and actually then take that in terms of context of those endpoint technologies that are sitting, technologies really invested in with your companies. And actually, it makes life so much easier as a user. I've been using Zero Trust platforms now myself for about 3 or 4 years, and I cringe every time I have to go back to a VPN. It's a different world, honestly, once you start to see the experience. It comes with a number of benefits, say performance and security, and it's actually built in, but actually this is all part of a much broader platform. And actually this is where we start to integrate with more the modern world. A good chunk of your cloud environments will have misconfigurations and will have errors. Your users will make mistakes. They will share calendars and resources with third-party apps. And actually, these CASB-style toolsets, cloud access security brokers, allow you to actually understand where those risks are and actually allow you to start making changes and controls based on the information that you see. So do you have a user that's sharing their calendar with a third-party app? Is there any documents that might be shared to the world? Are there any admin accounts without 2FA? Information like that will come back from all of your SaaS toolsets and allow you to correct those human errors that just necessarily creep in. That integrates natively with our web gateway platform. I'm just going to expedite things very slightly here, guys, the timing. But this then allows us to actually detect things like your shadow IT use and actually enforce the actions and the information that we take from your CASB platforms. So the couple of slides here that really just want to run for. I think we're going to lose some of the case study time from the timings we're actually running out at the moment. But all of the web gateway market has broadly the same application awareness. We buy from the same data sets. We all get the same open source feeds, and we all get feedback from our community. We have the benefit of running now 2 trillion DNS requests every single day. We're making 126 billion blocks every single day. And about 80% of the blocks that we actually make actually come from our own data sets. And this area where you can see newly seen domains, DNS tunneling sites, malware, and phishing, making the biggest difference. One last slide, I'll leave you on, guys. This really is what underpowers everything that we do. You mentioned the scale of our network, having 38 million web applications, all of the zero trust customers we have. Ultimately, that gives us a huge amount of data. And actually, we use that to effectively perform a threat feed style service. But this is what's underpinning that platform. Say 126 billion blocks a day. The only security-focused web crawler in the entire world. All the information from our bot management attacks, all of our DDoS frameworks, everything we do runs into 28 separate machine learning models, and actually outputs as a set of threat intelligence. So there we go, guys. Thank you very much.